Destroy Gummy Worm, catch Gummy Worm, question mark, profit. Before Mega Rayquaza makes its triumphant return with Legends ZA, first we gotta shiny hunt it and take it down. So before we get onto the Rayquaza video, I really just want to take a second to thank you guys. The love and support we've gotten on the Godzilla Kong retrospective has truly meant the world to me. I've loved kaiju for most of my life, and seeing that there's so many people coming out and the positive reception for it, we are going to be bringing kaiju stuff back onto the channel. Thank you guys. We've all run the simulations. It's tough, but it ain't invincible. The sky-high Pokemon Rayquaza, with a pretty aggressive stat distribution of 150 in both offensive stats, a fantastic 95 speed, 90 in both defenses, and a 105 HP stat. As far as a beat stick goes, it's not quite a glass cannon, especially considering the Pokemon and Dynamax adventures don't exactly have good moves, good stats. It's far from an easy matchup despite that quad weakness. But it is only a threat level 6, because there are a lot of fantastic ice types, and its moves are not necessarily the best. Packing Hyper Voice, Extreme Speed, Dragon Pulse, Dragon Ascent, and Brutal Swing, all of its moves come with some pretty massive downsides. Dragon Ascent is its most powerful option, but it comes at the cost of actually decapitating its own defenses, which are not fantastic to begin with, especially with a quad weakness, and a weakness to some pretty common typings and pretty common moves. Most of its best options to use against it are actually specially defensive, meaning Dragon Pulse hardly scratches them, and Brutal Swing is just a pathetically weak move. As well as, unlike some other Pokemon that are Dragon types, its best counters are special, meaning even if it uses Max Wormwind, that doesn't really hinder them too much. And Max Strike, you're already slower than this Pokemon anyway, so it's not like a Max Strike speed drop really hinders you too badly. Though while Rayquaza's stats may seem unimpressive, its ability of Airlock shuts down any and all weather effects. Meaning, all of those Pokemon that have access to the move Blizzard, you can't set up Max Hailstorm and have Hail reliably allow you to hit Blizzards. Airlock completely shuts down all weather-related effects, both good and bad. So things like Slush Rush don't take effect, Hail's perfectly accurate Blizzard doesn't take effect, but also residual damage from Hail doesn't take effect either. This also means, unfortunately, Weather Ball is completely out of the question, so the otherwise fantastic Frostmoth will not be viable here. As a lot of Pokemon do actually get access to Weather Ball, this is pretty crippling. But let's get counting down the 15 best Pokemon to use against this giant Gummy Worm before its Mega makes its terrifying debut on the Switch 2. Number 15 is Crustle. With a fantastic stat distribution and the access to Shell Smash, it's got a powerful Rock Tomb, especially when juiced up by Shell Smash, capable of dropping Rayquaza's fantastic speed, letting your allies capitalize on those speed drops and hit it for big damage before Rayquaza can get up to beat stick power. It also is a fairly good Dynamax, as with Airlock in effect, your allies, even if they aren't Steel, Rock, or Ground types, don't actually take recoil damage from the sand. Though unfortunately this does mean you and other rock types do not get the 50% special defense boost that the Sandstorm brings, and abilities like Sand Force don't get activated. It on the other hand does let you be much more flexible with Dynamaxing rock types, as they do generally resist some of the more damaging moves Rayquaza has at its disposal, though you will need to watch out for a move like Dragon Pulse after you have used a Shell Smash on Crustle. Before we get on to number 14, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more, comment below what your favorite counters are for Rayquaza, and perhaps even what your favorite Mega Evolution is, and what you hope to see in Legends ZA. But number 14 is Jynx. Jynx has almost the exact inverse of Crustle's stats. With a fantastic speed stat, all things considered, very bulky special defense, and a fantastic 115 special attack packing Ice Beam, hard to wonder why this thing isn't higher on the list. The main reason for that is its physical defense is non-existent, Rayquaza gets access to Brutal Swing, and with moves like Extreme Speed and Dragon Ascent, those will cut straight through Jynx's poor bulk. But with a speed that is equal to Rayquaza's, if it has a speed boosting nature, it's very likely you can outspeed the Rayquaza and hit it with a brutally powerful Ice Beam. This also means allies with speed-dropping moves, such as the fantastic Icy Wind, allow you to outspeed Rayquaza on following turns and get off once more those powerful Ice Beams. It's a very high-risk, very high-reward Pokemon that ordinarily I would recommend steering clear of, But given Rayquaza's only moves are things such as Extreme Speed or Brutal Swing, things like Wide Guard or Queenly Majesty from something like Serena can actually shut that down entirely. Though I wouldn't recommend using Serena against a Rayquaza. Not bad, not great, but perfectly usable. 13, we've got Frostlass. It suffers from some of the same problems that Jinx does, though it does possess a significantly better physical defense stat and significantly better HP stat, so it can actually take a move like Brutal Swing quite well, while also packing a fantastic 110 speed. This thing will outrun Rayquaza, and with Frost Breath, that is a 90 base power move that is a 90 base power move after always critting, or it's got Triple Axle, both of which are quite powerful, and unlike many other ice types and even other Pokemon and Dynamax adventures in general, it does outspeed Rayquaza, even with the 5-level difference. It loses out because it is quite frail, as those dragon moves and those flying moves will definitely demolish its HP, but it is entirely immune to those normal type moves like Hyper Voice and Extreme Speed. It also can actually shrug off a move like Brutal Swing, as it is relatively low power, and its defenses aren't non-existent. But it is still quite frail, and a move like Dragon Pulse will still chunk it pretty badly. Number 12 is Lycanroc Midnight Form, with a no-guard Stone Edge. And a relatively high physical attack stat, this thing can do out some fantastic damage. It also shrugs off Dragon Ascent, has enough special defense to tank a move like Dragon Pulse, and doesn't fear any of its normal moves. So while it is quite good at dealing out damage and taking hits quite well, it only loses out as it doesn't exploit the quad weakness Rayquaza has. If this was, say, an Ice Rock type that had those moves, it would be much higher up on this list. Even though it's only targeting Flying's weakness to Rock, it still does more than enough damage to be a worthwhile candidate. Though unfortunately, No Guard does not affect your allies, so you can't have this in play and have your allies hit perfectly accurate blizzards. No Guard only interacts with Lycanroc attacking a Pokemon and a Pokemon attacking Lycanroc. Even spread moves don't always hit everything because of the interaction. It's very, very strange. Number 11 is Pokemon we should be familiar with, but quite well at this point, Alcremie. There's really not much to say we haven't said before. It's specially bulky, so it can shrug off moves quite well. Physically, it isn't the bulkiest, and it is going to be not taking moves like Dragon Ascent too well. Extreme Speed, it doesn't really fear, and Brutal Swing, good joke. If Rayquaza had more special attacks, it would be higher on the list, but it really gets here for Decorate and G-Max Finale, as Ice types are quad effective. Giving an Ice type a boost with Decorate, either the physical or the special attack, they'll be able to cut through Rayquaza like a hot knife through butter. This is kind of one case where, despite being super effective against Rayquaza, you're not really going to be using G-Max Finale unless you need emergency healing, as it's just better to use Decorate on Ice type. Now, if an Ice type is not in play, of course, G-Max Finale is going to be quite useful, but it just does everything quite well. It's a Pokemon you can splash into just about any matchup, unless you're going up against various Steel types, and even then some of them it does actually quite decent against, and just go from there. Number 10 is Nidoking. With a fairly impressive physical attack stat and access to Ice Punch and relatively good bulk across the board for an attacker, it can take hits decently well and deal them out exceptionally so. This is kind of what I meant when I said that Airlock is kind of a blessing and a curse in that it can Dynamax use Max Hailstorm and it won't suffer the negative effects of hail. It can survive hits from Rayquaza quite well. The only issue is potentially Max Wormwind will decapitate its ability to do damage, as that does drop its physical attack stat. But all in all, it is a very solid beat stick. Pretty brain dead, but also matches well up against most Pokemon leading up the way to Rayquaza, so it's pretty versatile. Number 9 is Cryogonal, a very specialist Ice type that combines a lot of the traits of both Jinx and Frostlass in one, taking some of the best of both and some of the worst of both. It has Jinx relative stat distribution of the non-existent physical defense stat, but taking the quite high speed of Frostlass. Though it doesn't have nearly as high of a special attack as Jinx, it does have a very good special defense. It also critically doesn't have the weakness to a move like Brutal Swing. Though a move like Dragon Ascent will demolish it, a move like Extreme Speed it can actually take decently well. And that's what makes it just overall a better pick. It can survive and it can deal out damage. With access to a comparably high special attack and the very strong Ice Beam and Dynamax Blizzard, it can be incredibly powerful, but if it gets hit by a move such as Dragon Ascent or Max Airstream from Dragon Ascent, it's gonna go down quick, fast, and in a hurry. but it can definitely stand up to hits a lot better than something like Frostlass or Jinx. And on the list, we've got Sneasel. This is a relatively versatile Pokemon, as it has access to Triple Axle, allowing it to do fantastic physical damage with a very high physical attack stat comparatively. Very good speed, so it can outrun Rayquaza, but it also comes packing Dark moves. Now, there's a reason you'd actually want to use Dark moves on Rayquaza, even without them being super effective. Something like Throat Chop disables Rayquaza's Hyper Voice, and if you Dynamax, they drop Special Defense, which many Ice types, many Fairy types, and some of the Dragon types are also special attackers, allowing them to snowball damage. Yes, pun intended. So its ability to plug and play reflects what your team is. If you don't have other Ice types, you're probably just going to want to go Triple Axle or Dynamax into Triple Axle. If you've got a lot of Ice types or just a lot of special attacks on your team, you're probably going to want to click that Max Darkness for overall more damage in the long run, at least for the first move, and then just go for Ice moves later. It is on the little bit of the frailer side, but its special defense is enough to survive a move like Hyper Voice. Dragon Pulse, not so much. Physically, yeah, it's going to get dumpstered by a Flying Stab move from Rayquaza, but this thing is meant for Neum and hit hard. Not really much else. It also gets access to Snarl, so if you want to support and drop the special attack from Rayquaza, there's that, but I wouldn't really recommend that, as it's better just to go for either the special defense drop or the massive damage from Triple Axle Ice. Dynamax move. Number 7, we have Dedenne. A lot of what we said before with previous raids, such as against Yveltal, are applicable here. It has a good defensive typing for this. It is immune to Rayquaza's Dragon moves. It is resistant to the Brutal Swing, which really isn't that too damaging to begin with, and it is resistant to Dragon Ascent. The worst move Rayquaza can hit it with is Hyper Voice or Extreme Speed, and even though it's on the frailer side, it can still take those decently well, because they're non-stab. It's also got a fantastic speed stat, 101, so it can outspeed Rayquaza and hit it with a move like Dazzling Gleam. Also, with access to Entrainment, it can give an ally plus, jack up their special attack, and both it and that Pokemon are now hitting even harder. This is the highest non-Ice type move user on the list for that reason, as a 50% boost on top of a super effective hit, and an ally's 50% boost, possibly if that ally is another special attacking Ice type, is quite good. Number 6 is Porygon. It may seem a bit strange to have Porygon on this list above something like Dedenne, but what Porygon lacks in its Ice type stab, it brings in Download Ice Beam. There's a 50-50% chance that it actually is going to get the download on its special attack set, which means it'll functionally have stab on its Ice type move Ice Beam. It also gets access to Foul Play, so you can Dynamax and use a Max Dark move on it, which drops its special defense, and then hit it with Ice Beam. Though I wouldn't really recommend that, as I'd recommend just doubling down to the Ice Beam anyway. The potential for it to get that +1/2 special attack is really not a gamble you particularly lose anything on. It's got the bulk to take a hit other than Dragon Ascent or Max Wyrmwind, and it does have a relatively strong Ice Beam, without the crippling weakness that something like Jinx or Cryogon will have in their non-existent physical defense, though its physical bulk isn't the greatest. It also does have a relatively slow speed, so it's not going to be going first in any case. Got a lot of good things, got a lot of not so good things, but it's a relatively low risk, high reward Pokemon that you can plug and play in a lot of situations. At number 5, we've got Celio. Got a decent HP stat and relatively good defenses, good special attack with a good Ice Beam, not the greatest, not terrible, it's perfectly usable. And much like many of the other unevolved Pokemon on this list, it can actually capitalize on that Eviolite, though that is a bit of an RNG chance to actually pick up. It can work, it can take hits, it can hit okay enough, and again, it is exploiting a quad weakness, so the fact that special attack isn't super high doesn't matter as heavily. Number 4, we've got Vanillish. Having pretty much the same stat distribution as Porygon, it makes up for that by actually always having true Ice Stab and access to Ice Beam. It is relatively bulky, and even though it doesn't possess a fantastic speed stat, if an ally has a move like Icy Wind or Electro Web, or just generally capable of slowing Rayquaza down a little bit, it will outspeed it, and it will again hit it with that powerful Ice-type stab Ice Beam, and Dynamax Blizzard. Not great, but not terrible. Number 3 is Piloswine. This is a fantastically bulky Pokemon. Rayquaza's most powerful move is that Dragon Ascent. and with a good physical defense and a very good HP stat with relatively good special defense to take those special attacks, access to Dynamax Blizzard or Physical Ice Shard, it's a very flexible Pokemon. This is also a case where its speed doesn't actually matter because Ice Shard is a priority move. Again, it's overall relatively flexible for being a giant pig mammoth. Its slow speed also couples well with Pokemon such as coaching users or decorate users. Number 2 is Alolan Sandslash. Fantastically bulky with that steel typing, it can shrug off any hit from Rayquaza. Rayquaza has nothing that hits Alolan Sandslash for neutral damage other than Brutal Swing, which is pathetically weak, or Dynamax Brutal Swing, which again is pathetically weak because it's hitting the 120 physical defense stat. Access to Swords Dance and Avalanche is brutal. It actually can reliably set up and use Swords Dance, because again, it doesn't fear anything from Rayquaza. It also is probably one of the few Pokemon that doesn't really mind not needing to Dynamax here, because if you use Avalanche, you will be dealing a 120 base power move, as Avalanche's power is doubled when moving after the opponent, though only if you get attacked by it. But even then, a 60 base power move boosted by Swords Dance, hardly anything to scoff at. But once you Dynamax and if you have that +2, Rayquaza really doesn't want to take that hit. It can shrug hits off, it can hit incredibly hard. What could possibly be better than Alolan Sandslash? Well, what about something that doesn't really need to deal with the setup to do big damage, and isn't really bothered by speed? Number 1 is Aurorus. But Maxis, this thing doesn't have any Ice-type moves. Correction, it does. Aurorus' ability is Refrigerate, meaning that its normal type Body Slam gets converted into an Ice-type move, which even though it doesn't have the greatest physical attack at only base 77, Body Slam is boosted by 20% and is then converted into an Ice-type move. This means that it is functionally a 96 base power Ice-type move that then receives the same type attack bonus. This is more powerful than many of the other Ice Beam users we've actually seen. This also stacks when it Dynamaxes. It's 130 base power, becoming 156, and then factor in the same type attack bonus. It really makes up for that. All of that is not even considering that when it's just using Body Slam, it has a 30% chance to paralyze Rayquaza. With its speed being taken down, speed is pretty much Rayquaza's one big advantage. Compared to other legendaries, it has comparable offensive stats, but its bulk is pathetically low compared to them, and its speed is only slightly above them. Being paralyzed, many Pokemon can get the jump on it and just hammer it with those brutal attacks. And again, that's hitting a quad weakness on Rayquaza. And if you don't want to fish for the paralysis chance, it just straight up has Thunder Wave. It is also Rock Ice, meaning it doesn't fear Dragon Ascent, Rayquaza's most damaging move that basically everything fears, again, other than Alolan Sandslash. It doesn't fear the normal type moves, as again, it is a rock type resistant, and those moves don't really hit anything too hard to begin with. Brutal Swing, we've been over how pathetically weak it is. And Aurorus is a specially defensive behemoth, meaning the only move Aurorus, air quote, fears is Dragon Pulse. With a 123 HP stat and 92 special defense, this thing can shrug that off like it is nothing. Aurorus is the best of basically everything in one. Now, granted, if it had, say, a normal type special attack, it would be even better, but that'd be way too OP. But that is all today. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more, comment below your thoughts. Who do you think is the best counter to take down Rayquaza? And what do you think of our list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And let us know what you would like to see next week on these Dynamax Adventure counter guides. As mentioned, Rayquaza is tough, but it ain't invincible. When it comes to most legendaries, they do have a comparable offensive stat to Rayquaza. 150 is sort of the baseline, but many of them have either better bulk, better defensive typings, and that's why Rayquaza is only a threat level 6. It can hit very hard, but it just doesn't really have the moves to capitalize on, as Dragon Ascent, its most powerful move, cuts its own defenses with a quad weakness that really isn't something that is long-term beneficial for it. Plus, Dragon Flying isn't really a good defensive typing to begin with. There's been a lot of good Dragon Flying types, things like Dragon and Salamence, but they really are strong for other reasons. But I'll see you guys next time.